Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the stars shift into normal space as his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The exploration vessel had been traveling for 3 months through unexplored regions of the galaxy, searching for new worlds and possible signs of alien life. Morrison was a veteran explorer who had discovered 12 habitable planets during his 20-year career, but this mission felt different somehow. Lieutenant Commander Amy Rodriguez turned from her station with excitement in her voice as she called out sensor readings. The tactical officer had detected massive energy signatures coming from the Kepler 442 system just ahead of them. The readings were unlike anything they had seen before, with power outputs that suggested advanced technology far beyond what humans had achieved. Morrison ordered the small fleet of 5 ships to approach carefully while maintaining combat readiness just in case. The human exploration fleet consisted of the UES Horizon as the command vessel, along with the UES Denver, UES Phoenix, UES Atlanta, and UES Chicago. Each ship carried a crew of about 200 people, including scientists, engineers, and military personnel. They were armed with basic defensive weapons, but nothing that could match a truly hostile alien force if one existed. Morrison had always hoped that first contact with alien life would be peaceful, but he was experienced enough to prepare for the worst. As the fleet moved deeper into the system, the sensors began picking up more detailed information about what lay ahead. Rodriguez reported detecting artificial structures orbiting the 4th planet, along with what appeared to be a large number of spacecraft moving in organized patterns. The energy signatures were coming from crystalline vessels that seemed to phase in and out of normal space, making them difficult to track. Morrison felt his heart racing as he realized they were about to make first contact with an alien civilization. The aliens noticed the human ships almost immediately and began moving toward them in formation. Morrison ordered his communications officer to broadcast standard first contact protocols in multiple languages and mathematical sequences, hoping to establish peaceful dialogue. The response came quickly, but not in the way anyone expected. Without warning or attempt at communication, 3 of the alien vessels opened fire on the UES Denver using weapons that bypassed the ship's shields completely. Morrison watched in horror as the Denver was torn apart by energy beams that seemed to come from another dimension. The ship's hull cracked open like an egg-spilling atmosphere, and debris into space along with the bodies of people he had known for years. Captain Lisa Brooks, who commanded the Denver, managed to send one final transmission before her ship exploded completely. Her voice was calm even as death approached, telling Morrison to warn Earth about what was coming. The aliens, who called themselves the Zephyrian Collective, had been expecting to encounter another primitive species ripe for conquest. Admiral Kexathera, commanding the alien fleet, was following standard protocol for dealing with new civilizations. Destroy half their forces to demonstrate superiority, then demand immediate surrender and submission to Zephyrian rule. This had worked successfully for over 3,000 years across dozens of different species throughout the galaxy. The Phoenix was the next target as the Zephyrian ships continued their attack. The crystalline vessels could phase through normal matter, making them nearly impossible to hit with conventional weapons. Commander Richard Stone tried desperately to fight back, but his ship's weapons passed harmlessly through the alien vessels, while their return fire cut his ship in half. Within minutes, 2 human ships and over 400 lives had been lost without the aliens suffering a single casualty. Morrison opened a communication channel to the Zephyrian flagship, hoping to negotiate some kind of ceasefire or at least buy time for his remaining ships to escape. His voice was steady despite the rage building inside him as he spoke to the alien commander. Morrison identified himself and his species, asking why the Zephyrians had attacked without provocation or attempt at peaceful contact. He offered to withdraw from their space if that would prevent further bloodshed. Admiral Kexathera responded with what could only be described as contempt in his voice. The Zephyrian commander explained that humans were clearly an inferior species that would now serve the collective or be eliminated entirely. He described how dozens of other civilizations had been conquered in exactly this manner, and how resistance was both futile and foolish. The admiral seemed to find human attempts at negotiation amusing rather than worthy of serious consideration. Something fundamental changed in Morrison's expression as he listened to the alien's words. The captain had served in the Mars colonial wars where he had seen friends die in brutal combat, but this was different. These aliens had murdered his people without even trying to communicate, first treating human lives as completely worthless. Morrison's voice became cold and hard as he delivered a response that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Morrison told the Zephyrian admiral that he had made a grave mistake and that humanity would remember its dead. The words carried a promise of vengeance that transcended species barriers, even though the aliens did not yet understand their meaning. The captain's threat was dismissed as empty posturing from a defeated enemy, but Morrison meant every word he spoke. Humanity had strict codes about protecting its own and severe consequences for those who harmed innocents. The Zephyrians continued their attack, expecting the remaining human ships to surrender or flee in terror. Instead, Morrison ordered his fleet to do something that no species in galactic history had ever attempted. Rather than retreat or submit, the humans chose to ram their ships directly into the alien vessels using their fusion reactors as improvised weapons. It was a desperate tactic that guaranteed their own destruction, but might take some enemies with them. Captain Brooks, commanding the Atlanta, managed to position her ship inside the formation of Zephyrian vessels before detonating her fusion core. The explosion created a chain reaction that destroyed 6 alien ships and damaged several others, lighting up the entire system like a miniature star. The Atlanta's sacrifice proved that the crystalline ships could be hurt if humans were willing to pay the ultimate price to do it. Rodriguez reported that the surviving Zephyrian ships were beginning to withdraw, apparently shocked by the humans' willingness to die rather than surrender. Morrison's own ship was badly damaged and losing atmosphere, but he managed to record a final message for Earth warning them about the threat and explaining what had happened. He described the alien capabilities and tactics while emphasizing that these creatures showed no mercy or interest in peaceful coexistence. The Battle of Kepler 442 ended with the complete destruction of the human exploration fleet, but the Zephyrians had learned something they did not expect. Humans were unlike any species they had encountered before, showing a determination and willingness to sacrifice that bordered on madness. The aliens retreated to their strongholds to report this strange new enemy, but the damage had already been done. They had awakened something in humanity that would reshape the entire galaxy before the war was over. The quantum communication relay from the Kepler 442 system reached Earth exactly 72 hours after the massacre. Captain Morrison's final transmission played on emergency channels across every human colony and military installation in known space. The message was clear and devastating as Morrison's voice described the unprovoked attack by the Zephyrian collective and the complete destruction of his exploration fleet. 847 human lives had been snuffed out without warning or mercy by aliens who treated humanity as nothing more than insects to be crushed. President Marcus Kane called an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly within hours of receiving the transmission. Representatives from Mars, Europa, Titan, and dozens of other human colonies gathered in the Great Hall where decisions affecting billions of people would be made. Kane was a former military officer who had served in 3 different colonial conflicts and understood exactly what Morrison's message meant. The aliens had declared war on humanity whether they realized it or not, and there could be only one response. Kane's address to the assembly became legendary in human history as he spoke words that would be remembered for generations. The president declared that the Zephyrians wanted a war, and humanity would give them a war they would never forget. Every human world would contribute to the war effort, and every citizen would play a part in the destruction of the alien empire. Kane signed the Total War Authorization Act that very day, giving the military unlimited authority and resources to prepare for the coming conflict. Admiral Patricia Wells received her appointment as Supreme Commander of Human Defense Forces less than 6 hours after Kane's speech. Wells was a veteran of the Martian Independence Wars, where she had earned a reputation for innovative tactics and absolute refusal to accept defeat. Her first official act was to promote the survivors of Kepler 442, including Morrison and Rodriguez, to key command positions in the rapidly expanding military structure. Their experience fighting the Zephyrians would be invaluable in the war to come. What the aliens did not understand was that humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario for over 2 centuries. Every human colony had hidden military installations buried deep underground, where weapons and equipment were manufactured and stored. Civilian populations had been trained in basic warfare from childhood, as part of standard education requirements. The peaceful exploration fleets that aliens encountered were merely the visible portion of humanity's true military capabilities. The response began with something the galaxy had never witnessed before, which was total industrial mobilization of an entire species. Every factory on every human world was converted to military production within weeks of the war declaration. Civilian manufacturing plants began producing weapons, ammunition, and military equipment around the clock. Children learned to assemble weapon components during school hours, while elderly citizens worked 20-hour shifts in munitions factories. The entire human species became a single massive war machine with one purpose. Dr. Elena Vasquez led the scientific analysis of Zephyrian technology recovered from the wreckage at Kepler Dortoskirti. Her team worked continuously for months studying every fragment of alien metal and circuitry they could find. Vasquez discovered that the aliens' ability to phase through matter relied on quantum field manipulators that created small tears in space-time. More importantly, she found that these devices could be disrupted by specific electromagnetic frequencies that human technology could generate. The breakthrough led to development of what became known as reality anchors, which were electromagnetic field generators that could force Zephyrian ships back into normal space. Every human vessel was equipped with these devices within 6 months of their invention. The anchors would level the playing field by removing the aliens' primary tactical advantage and making them vulnerable to conventional human weapons. Vasquez's discovery would prove crucial in every major battle of the war. Colonel Ryan Mitchell received command of the new Strategic Warfare Division, which was tasked with developing tactics specifically designed to fight the Zephyrians. Mitchell studied every piece of intelligence about alien culture and psychology that humanity possessed. Where other galactic species fought with honor codes and traditional rules of engagement, humans would embrace total warfare without restraint. Mitchell's doctrine emphasized striking without warning, targeting civilian infrastructure, and using psychological warfare to break enemy morale. The human military philosophy became fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had seen before. While aliens fought pitched battles in open space, humans preferred stealth attacks and guerrilla tactics. Human ships would hide in asteroid fields or behind planets waiting for enemy fleets to pass before striking critical targets. They targeted supply lines, communication networks, and command centers rather than engaging in direct fleet battles where possible. The goal was to make the Zephyrians afraid to leave their heavily defended systems. Training of human forces proceeded at an unprecedented pace as millions of volunteers enlisted in the military. Veterans from previous colonial conflicts served as instructors teaching new recruits how to fight and survive in space combat. Simulation programs recreated the Battle of Kepler 442 so that every human soldier would understand exactly what they were fighting against. The training was brutal and realistic, because there would be no second chances when facing an enemy that showed no mercy. The first major test of human capabilities came at the Proxima Centauri system, where a Zephyrian fleet attempted to destroy the colony on New Geneva. Intelligence reports indicated that a force of 50 alien ships was approaching the system with the intention of demonstrating Zephyrian power by wiping out the entire human population. Admiral Wells decided to use this attack as an opportunity to show the aliens that humanity was no longer the helpless prey they had encountered at Kepler 442. 300 human warships had been positioned throughout the Proxima system weeks before the alien arrival. The ships used the system's stellar radiation to mask their energy signatures, while waiting in perfect silence for the enemy to enter the trap. When the Zephyrian fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, they found themselves completely surrounded by human forces, equipped with reality anchors and new quantum weapons designed specifically to penetrate alien defenses. The Battle of New Geneva lasted exactly 18 hours from first contact to final alien ship destruction. Human forces used coordinated attacks to overwhelm individual Zephyrian vessels, while reality anchors prevented them from escaping into phase space. The aliens fought desperately, but their traditional tactics were useless against an enemy that had studied their every weakness. When the battle ended, not a single Zephyrian ship remained intact, and the human colony was completely unharmed. News of the victory spread throughout human space like wildfire as populations celebrated their first major success against the alien invaders. More importantly, the battle demonstrated that Zephyrian technology and tactics could be countered with proper preparation and equipment. Admiral Wells used the victory to justify even greater military expansion, as humanity prepared for the long war ahead. The aliens had started something they could not finish, and humanity intended to make them pay for every human life lost at Kepler 442. The defeat at New Geneva sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian collective as Admiral Kexthera struggled to explain how 50 of their most advanced warships had been completely destroyed by what they considered a primitive species. Reports flooded in from across Zephyrian territory, describing human fleets appearing without warning to strike military installations before vanishing into deep space. These were not the desperate actions of a species defending its homeworld, but the calculated moves of predators hunting their prey across the galaxy. The Zephyrian response was to call upon their client species for support in what they now realized was a serious threat to their empire. For over 3,000 years, the collective had ruled through fear and superior technology, while dozens of alien civilizations served as unwilling subjects. The Andromedans, with their advanced biotechnology, the mechanical stellar hegemony, and countless other species had provided resources and soldiers for Zephyrian expansion. Surely they would rally to defend their masters against this human uprising. Captain Ben Turner commanded the stealth frigate UES Shadowhawk, which had been conducting deep reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines for 6 months. His ship used advanced cloaking technology developed from captured Zephyrian equipment to move undetected through alien space. Turner's mission was to gather intelligence about enemy capabilities and positions, but what he discovered was far more valuable than military data. The Zephyrian Empire was held together by fear rather than loyalty, and cracks were already beginning to show. Turner began making contact with resistance. Movements on worlds throughout Zephyrian space offering human weapons and tactical support to anyone willing to fight their oppressors. The response was immediate and overwhelming, as species that had suffered under alien rule for centuries saw their first real chance for freedom. Human plasma rifles and quantum explosives began appearing in the hands of rebels across dozens of star systems. The galaxy erupted in simultaneous revolutions as the collective's subjects turned against their masters. On Andromeda, prime-freed slaves used human-supplied weapons to storm the massive crystalline towers where their Zephyrian overlords lived in luxury. The planetary governor was dragged from his palace and executed publicly, while crowds of liberated beings celebrated in the streets. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds as 3 millennia of oppression finally came to an end. The Zephyrian Empire was crumbling from within as humanity provided the spark that ignited long-suppressed hatred. The aquatic cetaceans of the Vega system proved particularly effective, allies as they turned their massive bioships against Zephyrian forces. These living vessels had been forced to serve as cargo haulers and troop transports, but now they became weapons of vengeance. Cetacean bioships could regenerate damage and adapt their weapon systems, making them nearly impossible to destroy. When they joined the human cause, the balance of power in the Vega sector shifted dramatically. Captain Amy Rodriguez had been promoted to command her own ship after her heroic actions during the early battles of the war. The UES Retribution was a new class of heavy cruiser specifically designed to hunt Zephyrian vessels using advanced reality anchors and quantum disruptors. Rodriguez led a task force of 12 ships on deep strike missions against enemy research facilities, where the aliens developed their most dangerous weapons. These raids were essentially suicide missions carried out by volunteers who understood they might not return. The most important target was a Zephyrian research station orbiting the neutron star designated Pulsar 7, where alien scientists were developing a weapon capable of destroying entire solar systems. The device worked by destabilizing the nuclear fusion process inside stars, causing them to explode and wipe out everything in their systems. If this weapon became operational, it could end the war by eliminating every human colony simultaneously. Rodriguez knew her mission was to capture or destroy this research before it could be completed. The assault on Pulsar 7 required precise timing, as Rodriguez's ships had to approach through the intense radiation field surrounding the neutron star. Human shields could only protect them for a limited time before the cosmic radiation would kill everyone aboard. The research station was heavily defended by automated weapons, systems and a squadron of Zephyrian patrol ships, but Rodriguez had studied the facility's design for weeks preparing for this moment. Rodriguez's team managed to penetrate the station's defenses and board the facility, where they discovered the horrifying scope of the alien weapon project. The Starkiller device was nearly complete and would have been ready for deployment within days. Captain Rodriguez personally oversaw the download of all research data, while her engineers set charges throughout the station. The explosion that followed consumed both the research facility and its terrible weapon, ensuring it could never threaten human worlds. The stolen data proved invaluable, as it revealed not only the specifications for the Starkiller weapon, but also detailed information about Zephyrian quantum technology. Dr. Elena Vasquez and her research team used this intelligence to develop even more effective countermeasures against alien capabilities. Human reality anchors became more powerful, while new quantum disruptor weapons could tear apart Zephyrian ships at the molecular level. The technological advantage was shifting in humanity's favor. General Victoria Stone was appointed to lead the development of humanity's ultimate weapon against the Zephyrian homeworld of Cathera Prime. The alien capital was protected by a quantum barrier that had never been breached in 3,000 years of existence. This barrier made the planet unreachable through conventional faster-than-light travel, effectively creating an impregnable fortress. Stone made breaking through this defense her personal obsession, as she worked with the most brilliant scientists humanity could provide. Dr. Helen Carter led the theoretical physics team tasked with finding a way through the quantum barrier. Her solution was both ingenious and incredibly dangerous, involving the use of a modified black hole generator to tunnel underneath the barrier through folded space-time. The calculations required were beyond anything humanity had ever attempted, and the risks were enormous. A single mistake could destroy entire star systems or trap the assault fleet in an alternate dimension forever. The project required resources from across human space, as entire asteroid belts were stripped of exotic matter needed for the black hole generator. Fusion plants were constructed inside dying stars to provide the massive amounts of energy required for the calculations. Every human colony contributed something to the effort, whether raw materials, computational power, or the lives of volunteers willing to test increasingly dangerous prototypes. Humanity was betting everything on one desperate gamble to end the war. Meanwhile, the war continued to rage across the galaxy as human forces pressed their advantage against an increasingly desperate enemy. Zephyrian fleets found themselves fighting on multiple fronts as their former subjects joined the human cause. The once mighty collective was reduced to defending a shrinking number of core systems, while human ships ranged freely through space that had been alien territory for millennia. The galaxy was learning to fear a new name, and that name was humanity. Operation Prometheus launched exactly 2 years after the massacre at Kepler 442, as Admiral Patricia Wells stood on the bridge of the flagship UES Retribution, preparing to lead 50 human dreadnoughts on the most dangerous mission in galactic history. The black hole generator had been positioned at the edge of the Zephyrian home system and was ready to create a tunnel through folded space-time that would bypass the quantum barrier. Protecting Cathera Prime, Dr. Helen Carter had spent months calculating the precise gravitational distortions needed to make the impossible journey possible. The risks were beyond anything humanity had ever attempted, as a single miscalculation would either collapse the tunnel and trap the entire fleet in an alternate dimension, or create a gravitational anomaly that would destroy everything within dozens of light years. Carter's team had run the calculations thousands of times using the most powerful computers humanity possessed, but there were still variables that could not be predicted. The assault fleet was gambling with the lives of 50,000 people on theoretical physics that had never been tested on this scale. Captain Jake Morrison now commanded the heavy cruiser UES Vengeance and led the advanced scout force that would be first through the tunnel into unknown space. Morrison had volunteered for this position, despite knowing that the scout ships would face the greatest danger as they emerged into a system filled with hostile forces. The captain, who had witnessed the original massacre at Kepler 442, was determined to be present when humanity delivered its final answer to Zephyrian aggression. The journey through folded space-time was unlike anything humans had ever experienced, as reality itself seemed to bend and twist around the ships. Crew members reported seeing impossible geometries that human minds were not designed to comprehend. while others experienced visions of alternate timelines where different versions of themselves lived and died. Several people went insane during the transit as their brains struggled to process information that violated every law of physics they understood. The tunnel felt endless even though the journey lasted only minutes in normal time. Morrison's scout force emerged from the tunnel to find themselves facing the largest military fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Over 10,000 Zephyrian ships waited in perfect formation around their homeworld, including massive motherships the size of small moons, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The sight should have been overwhelming for any sane military commander, but Morrison and his crews had long since passed the point where impossible odds mattered. They had come too far and sacrificed too much to be intimidated now. Admiral Wells brought the main fleet through the tunnel as alarms blared throughout the Zephyrian formations. The aliens had detected the gravitational anomaly created by the black hole generator, but they had never imagined that any species would be insane enough to actually tunnel through space-time itself. The appearance of 50 human dreadnoughts inside their most heavily defended system sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian command structure as they scrambled to respond to this unprecedented threat. Wells opened communication channels to broadcast a simple message across all frequencies in dozens of languages, so that every being in the system would understand her words. She spoke for the 847 dead of Kepler 442, for every world the Zephyrians had enslaved, and for every species they had destroyed during their 3,000-year reign of terror. Today humanity would claim its pound of flesh and the galaxy would witness what happened to those who made humanity angry. The Battle of Cathera Prime began as human ships equipped with reality anchors and quantum disruptors cut through Zephyrian formations like predators among helpless prey. The aliens' traditional advantages meant nothing against an enemy that had spent 2 years learning to counter every tactic, every weapon, and every strategy they possessed. Human captains who had studied Zephyrian combat methods for months executed perfect attacks that exploited weaknesses. The aliens did not even know they had commander. Alex Price led a squadron of fighter bombers through the defensive grid surrounding the largest Zephyrian mothership where the enemy fleet commander was coordinating the defense. Price's pilots had trained specifically for this mission, practicing high-speed runs through simulated Zephyrian defenses until they could execute the attack pattern in their sleep. The fighter bombers carried a new type of weapon that Dr. Carter's team had developed using stolen alien research. Data, the quantum viruses that Price's squadron delivered were designed to infect Zephyrian computer systems and turn the aliens' own technology against them. Within hours of the initial attack, half the Zephyrian fleet was destroying itself as human computer viruses took control of alien ships and weapon systems. Massive motherships opened fire on their own escorts while defense platforms turned their guns on the vessels they were supposed to protect. The orderly Zephyrian formations dissolved into chaos as friend fired upon friend. Admiral Kexathera watched in horror from his command ship as the empire he had served for centuries crumbled around him. The Zephyrian admiral who had started this war by ordering the attack on human ships at Kepler 442 now found himself facing an enemy beyond his worst nightmares. Human ships moved with precision and purpose while his own forces tore themselves apart under the influence of alien computer viruses. Everything he had believed about Zephyrian superiority was being proven wrong in the most brutal way possible. The real target of the human assault was not the defending fleet but Cathera Prime itself. General Victoria Stone had prepared a special weapon for the Zephyrian homeworld, using the same exotic matter technology that powered the black hole generator. The Planet Cracker missile was designed not merely to destroy the world but to erase it from space-time entirely, leaving behind a wound-in reality that would serve as a permanent reminder of what happened when someone threatened humanity as the missile descended toward the surface of Cathera Prime. Admiral Kexathera made one final, desperate transmission to the human fleet. His voice was broken and filled with a terror that his species had never experienced in their entire history of galactic conquest. The proud Zephyrian admiral who had laughed at human threats 2 years earlier now begged for mercy as he offered complete surrender of all remaining collective forces. Admiral Wells received the surrender offer and considered it for exactly 3 seconds before responding with words that would echo throughout the galaxy for generations. Her voice was cold and final as she spoke for every human who had died in this war, and every species that had suffered under Zephyrian rule. Wells told the alien admiral that humanity did not accept surrenders from those who had shown no mercy to others. The time for negotiation had ended at Kepler 442, and now there would be only justice. The planet cracker detonated, deep within Cathera Prime's core, creating a chain reaction that consumed the entire world in seconds. The explosion was visible from anywhere in the galaxy, as the Zephyrian homeworld collapsed into a gravitational singularity that twisted space-time around it. Where the alien capital had existed for millennia, there was now only a sphere of distorted reality that hurt to look at and drove most observers insane. The Zephyrian collective had been erased from existence, and humanity had delivered its final message to the galaxy. The destruction of Cathera Prime created a gravitational shockwave that could be detected from anywhere in the galaxy, as every spacefaring civilization watched their instruments register the impossible. Where the Zephyrian homeworld had existed, for thousands of years there was now only a twisted wound in spacetime that defied every law of physics known to galactic science. The few surviving Zephyrian ships scattered to the far corners of the galaxy, carrying news of their empire's complete annihilation at the hands of a species they had dismissed as primitive only 2 years earlier. President Marcus Kane addressed the galaxy from Earth 3 days after the battle using quantum communication arrays to broadcast humanity's message to every inhabited world. Kane announced the Terra Doctrine, which would govern human relations with all alien species from that day forward. Any civilization that threatened humanity or its allies would face the same fate as the Zephyrians, while those who chose peace would find no greater friend in the galaxy than the human race. The message was simple and direct, leaving no room for misinterpretation about humanity's intentions. The response from other galactic powers was immediate and varied, as ancient civilizations that had maintained careful balance for millennia suddenly found themselves facing a new apex predator. The crystalline hierarchy, which had ruled the galactic core for 10,000 years, sent diplomatic envoys to Earth within weeks of Kane's announcement. The elder machines that had existed since before most organic species evolved began calculating probability matrices for peaceful coexistence with humanity. Even the mysterious Void Collective that dwelt in the spaces between stars took notice of these aggressive newcomers. Admiral Jake Morrison was promoted to command the newly formed Galactic Peacekeeping Force, which became responsible for maintaining order throughout the territories formerly controlled by the Zephyrian Collective. Morrison's ships arrived at liberated worlds to find populations celebrating their freedom, while former Zephyrian administrators fled in terror. The human admiral offered each freed civilization a simple choice: join the growing human commonwealth as equal partners or remain independent under humanity's protection. Most chose alliance after witnessing what happened to those who opposed human interests. Dr. Elena Vasquez led scientific expeditions to former Zephyrian research facilities, where her teams recovered advanced technologies that humanity quickly integrated into their own expanding empire. Dimensional manipulation devices, quantum computing systems, and exotic matter production methods all became part of humanity's growing technological arsenal. The alien equipment was studied, improved, and mass-produced for use throughout human space. Within months, humanity had leaped forward centuries in technological development using captured Zephyrian knowledge. The other major galactic powers watched these developments with growing alarm as humanity's influence spread across thousands of star systems. The balance of power that had existed for millennia was crumbling as this aggressive new species demonstrated both the willingness and capability to destroy anyone who opposed them. Ambassador Claire Johnson was tasked with establishing diplomatic relations with these ancient civilizations while making humanity's position absolutely clear to all potential threats. Johnson's message to the galactic powers was direct and uncompromising, as she explained that humanity sought peaceful coexistence with all species, but would never again allow another Kepler 442 to happen. The ambassador made it clear that any attack on human colonies or allies would result in swift and total retaliation, using the same methods that had erased the Zephyrian homeworld from existence. Most civilizations chose to establish peaceful relations after witnessing the smoking crater where Cathera Prime had once existed. The few powers that decided to test human resolve learned quickly why the galaxy had begun whispering humanity's name in fearful tones. The crystalline hierarchy attempted to demonstrate their own strength by conducting raids against human colonies in the Outer Rim territories. Admiral Amy Rodriguez, who now commanded the Fourth Fleet, responded by systematically hunting down every hierarchy ship in known space. When the hierarchy overmind finally sued for peace, Rodriguez's terms were non-negotiable: complete disarmament and submission to human oversight of all military activities. The Void Collective tried a more subtle approach by attempting to manipulate human politics through their network of psychic agents who had successfully controlled other species for centuries. They discovered that humans had developed mental defenses specifically designed to counter psychic intrusion after studying captured Zephyrian telepaths. When their infiltration attempt was discovered, Colonel Ryan Mitchell's Special Forces teams traced the conspiracy back to its source and eliminated the collective's leadership in a single coordinated strike across 17 different star systems. Within 5 years of the Zephyrian War's end, humanity had become the dominant power in the galaxy, not through conquest, but through the simple demonstration that they possessed both the willingness and capability to destroy any threat that emerged. The human commonwealth grew to encompass thousands of worlds and hundreds of different species. But unlike previous galactic empires, humanity ruled through partnership rather than subjugation. Former enemies became friends. Former slaves became citizens, and former victims became protectors under the aegis of human military might. Admiral Patricia Wells, now in her 70s, stood on the observation deck of Terra Prime, watching ships from 100 different species dock at humanity's new capital station. The massive facility orbited Earth and served as the center of galactic government, where representatives from countless worlds came to conduct business. The galaxy was at peace, but it was a peace enforced by the knowledge that humanity possessed both the will and the weapons to end any threat that might arise. A young ensign approached Wells with a report of strange energy signatures detected by long-range sensors monitoring the galactic core. The readings suggested the presence of an ancient civilization that had been dormant for millions of years, but was now showing signs of activity. The xenobiology department believed these signals might indicate the awakening of something that predated all known galactic civilizations. Wells smiled grimly as she reviewed the data, knowing that whatever emerged from the galactic core would face the same choice offered to every other species. Wells turned to the young officer and quoted an old human saying about how once someone had been to hell, everywhere else was just a vacation. Humanity had gone to hell the day the Zephyrians killed their people at Kepler 442, and everything since then had been teaching the galaxy what they learned in that dark place. Whatever ancient power was stirring in the galactic core would learn the same lesson that every other civilization had discovered: humanity protects its own, and heaven help anyone who tries to take that away from them. Automated beacons continued broadcasting throughout human space, sending the same message that had been transmitting since the end of the Zephyrian War. In 1,000 different languages, the warning was identical: this system is under the protection of the human commonwealth, and while humans are peaceful people, they are not harmless people. The galaxy had learned to listen to these words and choose their actions accordingly, because everyone now knew what happened to those who ignored humanity's warnings.